Mark, you're gonna.
Okay, it's 11:36. I think it's time to start the meeting. Thank everyone for joining us today. We have myself, Mark Wall, present, and I'll allow everyone here to introduce themselves.
Amaury Cruz.
Monica Plaza. Jordana Smith.
Janine Oliveira, First Service Residential.
Melissa Vasquez for Service Residential.
Okay, so that's everybody, and the purpose of the meeting, which was posted and circulated, is to review our finances. So, honestly don't know where to begin, but we do have lots of questions, and hopefully we can start with some of those, since we had those already sent in writing initially, and then we'll open it up to the floor thereafter.
Okay, my main question, Janine, as you saw in my written question, but the overarching issue is concerning the special assessment to cover the deficit that we had last year. So I understand that the board announced last year that they had covered that deficit. And it's my understanding that the deficit was due to the fact that the previous board was using money from the Bill Wright special assessment for the operating account expenses. But that was resolved. There was a special assessment to cover that deficit, and whatever had been taken out was put back in. So at some point before the transition, that situation should have been resolved. That's one aspect of the situation that I see. And the other one is that we have the loan that we have to pay for the Bill Wright concrete renovation project. That loan is up to date. That loan has been paid regularly, as far as I know. So therefore, there's nothing owed to that account from the special assessment. But still, it seems like there was some confusion at some point, and Mr. Ray Johnson, I believe, came and spoke to Jordana and Manny, and they got all worried, and they decided that $20,000 had to be transferred to the special assessment account. Why was that $20,000 transferred to the special assessment account if the special assessment account had been paid monthly? That's my concern number two. My concern number three is we have.
And just to interrupt for a second, ma'am, all right. I see you have a bunch of items on the list here. Do you want to go through all those items or you want to let them answer one at a time?
No, this is just one item that I'm talking about right now.
Number one.
This is number one. Number one has three facets.
Okay.
I have expressed two of them.
Got it.
The third one is that we have an account with $50,000 in it as a kind of guarantee for the bank, Banco Popular. My question is, if we're receiving monies, which amount to about $16,000 a month, from the special assessment payments that owners are making, and on the other hand, we're making the same amount of payments to the bank, where did that $50,000 come from? And how can we maintain it? Okay, so those are the three aspects of the same question. I don't know if it's clear, but I put it in writing, so I think it should be. So if you could answer that, please.
Melissa, did you get a chance to, I know you said that we looked at those questions, and I know that we had most of them answered. Do you wanna respond
Well,
with the findings?
as far as the $20,000 transfer, that one I don't have the answer to. But as far
think
as
that one was there.
no, because that one I didn't see
Yeah, I don't
on
think that
my
one was
on
there.
my list of questions. Now you have to keep in mind that we took over after a lot of this stuff had already transpired. So as far as identifying where those 50,000 came about, is gonna be difficult for us because we were given limited information from your prior management company. But as part of the terms of the loan, that money was required to be in an account to be secured. So that money should essentially stay there. And I have Kevin Mandillo on hold waiting. He's waiting for us to call him to answer any bank specific related questions, because that's not my specialty, that's his. And he was unable to meet with us here in person today, but he is available by phone whenever we're ready at that portion of the meeting to call him, and he can answer the questions regarding the bank. Now, Banco Popular is not one of our partner banks, so the amount of information that we have regarding Banco Popular is very limited, but we are able to assist with that. So as far as the money that's there, from my understanding, per your loan agreement, that money needs to remain there. I don't think the amount needs to change, but again, that's something that Kevin would need to elaborate on. So that's regarding the 50,000. That may have been money that you started collecting prior to the first payment being due. That's a possibility. So maybe that's how the funds were generated, but again, that was prior to us taking over. So I don't exactly know how the funds came about being in that account. Regarding the deficit of the $1,000, now, I hate to use this example again, but we were given limited resources and information from the prior management company. So with that $1,000, it's showing on your financials right now that there's a due from the special assessment to the operating account. So there's a couple of things that could have happened. For example, the money could have been collected into one account, but coded to the other account, which would have caused it to show as being owed. So for example, if it was brought in and deposited into the operating account, but it was coded to a special assessment charge code, the system would automatically tell you that the money was owed to the other account because it was that charge code, but the money was deposited into operating. Now, if it was to fund a deficit for the operating account, then it should be in the operating account where it belongs. Now, in these types of situations, this is simple. The system is just calculating where the money should be based off of charge codes and bank accounts. So my recommendation, which I spoke to Jordana about, is to speak with your CPA. Because what your CPA can do is, your CPA can put entries in the audit, which is in current draft form, as to how to allocate that money correctly, where it no longer shows that the money is owed to special assessment, that the money is showed as being the purpose of the operating deficit to pay the operating account. But that's something that we would need to speak with your CPA about, and I know Jordana reached out to them this morning to see if they would be available for this phone call. But it's my understanding that they're gonna be available a little bit later this afternoon. But that's definitely a conversation to have with your CPA to be able to correct that entry. Because, like I said before, since we were given limited resources, it's gonna be difficult for us to be able to identify exactly where that money is. Yes?
You're saying that at this point, we owe money to the special assessment account from the operating account?
Well, I'm saying within the financials, you're showing a due from. Yes.
We're showing that, so that's what it shows, and in your opinion, that's what needs to be done. Some money needs to be transferred from the operating account to the special
Well, no,
assessment.
not in my opinion. That's what the financials reflect based off of information that we received. If there's a decision that needs to be made by the board as far as what to do with those funds, then that's a decision amongst the board and with the advisory of your CPA.
Okay, see, please, let me see if you can answer this question for you, Julian. If the special assessment account is up to date, has been paid all along, is current, why do we owe money from the operating account to the special assessment account?
But it's the same it's gonna always be the same answer. It's the information that we received from the prior management company.
So in other words, you just
So
don't
based
know.
on, right, which is
don't know.
why I believe the CPA is looking at it to see if there's a way that we can reallocate it on the on the audit, basically.
But does it make sense to you that there will be money owed from the operating account to the special
Well,
assessment
but
account?
like I said before,
If the
it
special
depends.
assessment account is up to date on the bank?
Well, but remember, cash and entries are handled separately. So the way that those due froms are triggered are based off of coding and depositing. So like I said, if the two don't match, it automatically triggers as a due from, just as your regular accounting does. So for example, if you have an invoice that's supposed to be paid out of reserves, let's say, but it's coded to an operating expense, it's a simple clerical error, it's coded to the wrong account, it's automatically gonna show up on your due to do from, because we verify that everything matches. The two things have to match. The bank account that it comes out of has to match the code that it's coded to, and if it doesn't, we report it so that the board is aware of the fact that somehow there was a mistake made, or even if it was done on purpose, it's allocating that money separately so you know where it really belonged. So that's essentially why those things happen. So whether or not it was correct or incorrect is really not for us to determine. It's what the reporting says right now. So your CPA will be able to better advise you how to move forward in readjusting it so where it reflects as the board wishes for it to reflect.
I think that the problems comes from the beginning, because people has made payments on one check. So the system won't be able to identify the amounts that is going to the operator or to the assessment account. I've been saying this from the beginning. We should separate, we should obligate every single resident that owns money on the special assessment to make a different payment in order for, huh?
We do. They're required to have two different checks, absolutely. Every month I do two different checks.
Yeah, but that didn't,
Yeah,
I
but
believe that didn't happen at one
saying.
point.
That's exactly what I'm saying from the
I've been doing
beginning.
that for, I only have 5 years. I've been for 4
No,
years.
I understand, but
So-
since the beginning, there is people that it's not you, but there is a.
I'm saying that the previous man, I'm just an owner, I'm just telling you what, and I don't live here, so I just get the information from far. And I can tell you, once at the beginning I was trying to put the two together, and they told me right away, no, you have to do it separate.
No,
Maybe
they-
that was
they
here
rec-
in the
they
office,
did-
but not
They
direct
did
sending.
receive the previous management, because I was in the board in 2015. I know for a fact that there is people only make one payment, and when they do it online, it's not, I want to understand that it's not your,
No, I understand.
it's not your error. You know what I mean? But that was a problem, but it's something that we can solve. But we need to obligate, people has to make two payments, different payments, one for the assessment and one because first of all, it's more easy for us and for everybody. And second of all, we're gonna know exactly who is in delinquency on the management, on the maintenance, and who's delinquency on the assessment. That's the way that we can identify better the problem. I said since day one.
That's right.
I was in the 2015, and I know it was very complicated because they tried to make only one payment. Okay, here is the amount, here's the amount. So it was and everybody has the same problem. And Ray, you know that, Ray, you know that I'm telling the truth. It's not that,
Yeah.
it's not the money exists, but it's like the people making one payment.
All right, so just moving forward, because it sounds like it's a process, more of a technical thing, since we do have separate coupon books. Not everybody writes out separate checks, unfortunately, but I believe that before they get deposited, somewhere along the way, there is a journal entry, there is some bookkeeping, there is some, calculations that we know which units are paying what before it even comes to our financial statements 3 weeks later.
Right.
So that buffer period, right, is where the checks and balance should occur.
Exactly.
If you get one check and everything's combined, you should catch it before the financial statements come out 3 weeks later.
Correct. And the way that our system works, and I cannot speak for your previous management company, but the way that First Service works is that when your late fees are run on a monthly basis, what happens is we run late fees twice. We run them based off of charge codes. So first they're run based off of your maintenance fees, and then they're run based off of your special assessment. So they're actually run separately. And what happens is, as the person in our accounting department that's running your reports, if they see, because they're separate, so if you made the payment for all of it together, it's always gonna hit the maintenance fee first. So you may have $100 credit on one and have $100 charge on the other. So overall, it's gonna show at zero. Your ledger will show at zero, but on the back end, you're gonna see that you owe on one and you have a credit on the other. So they actually do that reconciliation process every single month when your late fees are run. However, the amounts have to match. So if you paid $98 but you have a credit of 100, they're not gonna automatically combine the two, because it's not our accounting department's responsibility to interpret what the resident wanted to do with those funds. So that's where the management team comes into play.
Sure.
Because once the late fees are run and all the reports are reconciled, then the manager can run a delinquency report just as our accounts receivable department does, and they can run them separately and see who owes and who has a credit. And then at that time, they can notify
Sure.
the accounting department, hey, allocate these funds to this one and that'll wash this one out, and things like that. So on our side, this is being done on a monthly
Right.
basis. So, but for the past, you know, in the previous management company,
Understood.
I'm not exactly sure how they handled the
No,
way
and,
that they
and,
did
and
it.
kudos to Jordana as well, because she does follow up with pretty much everyone when there is a late fee or some other question involved, so we are catching it.
Yes.
But I guess, going back to, you know, Monica's statement and Amari's question, when you guys took over, and there was some concerns, some questions, why wouldn't we be aware of it then instead of 6 months later now talking about it? So right now, we're deferring to the accountant.
We've
We
been
could-
talking about this since we took over. So this has been a discussion, I remember clearly having the discussion with Monica and the $100,000 since we took over. And remember, you had your prior management company who did your financials, and then after that, you subcontract an accountant
That's right.
to do your financials.
That's right.
So they got the information from the management company, we got the information from them. But the $100,000 has been a topic since the beginning. Now that I think there was a turnover, there was, we were looking through documents, we were trying to fine tune things, and now finally, it's been a discussion now for a month, 2 months, and now it's coming to light, but it's something that we had always been talking about since day one, since
So,
we
so
came in.
to your understanding, is that 100,000 sitting in an account somewhere?
Is it
Has
your-
it been used? Has it been?
Well, that's what we're gonna,
But
that's
if you
what we're
knew
gonna-
this already, and you've had this discussion all along,
It's been
what
in
is
the
your
fin-
interpretation of it?
I won't have an interpretation until we get the final information from the CPA.
Well,
It wouldn't be- it wouldn't-
According to
then-
the,
but then we're
according
all
to
in
the
the dark
financials,
here.
well,
The-
according to the financials, the money's sitting in the operating account
Correct,
right
and you
now.
haven't used it.
Right, that, according to the financials, that's where it's sitting, and it's just reflecting as though it's owed back to special assessment.
Okay.
But it's sitting and operating.
And we have a bank statement to show?
Well, remember, the funds, the cash is all commingled with your regular operating expenses,
what
so it
I-
doesn't, there's not one bank account with that specific balance in it. It's all in your regular operating account, so.
We should only have one bank operating
Right.
account.
Well, not necessarily, I mean,
No, we have
'Cause I
different
see-
reserve
Well, different.
accounts.
right, but what I'm saying is, I saw that you have like a money market account and things
Yeah.
like that, so it might not all be in one specific bank account, but it's all within your operating funds.
How many bank accounts do we have, Jordana, for operating?
Two.
2 accounts? And
Well, we have the regular operating and then we have the money market
The
account,
money
like she
market
stated.
account.
Right, exactly.
$32,000 in
Combined
it.
between
But
the
back
two
united.
is where the funds should be sitting, cause the thing is, most of the time, you have a money market account to yield higher interest.
No, I get it.
So, so yes, but within your operating expenses between the two accounts, the money should be sitting within those two.
Should be? Is
Yes.
that a fact?
I have
We
your,
have 92,000 in
I have your
operating.
cash balances based off of this, I ran this yesterday afternoon.
Right.
But these are your cash balances here. So this was your money market, your two
Right.
money market accounts are on top, and then your operating account is the third one.
So 2 money markets and an.
Well,
and
the
basically
secondary
operating.
money market account is the one with the restricted funds
The debt
required by the
service.
loan, so you can't really
The one
count
with
that one.
52,000 is a debt service account.
Right, so that's the restricted
That's
funds
at the
based off of the
bottom.
loan,
Right. Okay, so,
which could be, those funds could be included in those 52. You know, cause those are all operating money, those are all operating funds
well, look,
within the three.
we have an obligation, right? So we, had a special assessment, and it was our understanding that part of that money, the 80,000, was to go back towards, repaying special assessment monies that were borrowed last year
well, the understanding from where?
from.
Where does that understanding come from?
of where the 100,000, or
That
how
we,
it's being
that we
allocated?
need to turn over $80,000 to the special assessment account. How does that understanding come about?
We had meetings in the past, right, where the prior board did an assessment, right, because there was a shortfall. So otherwise, why would we have a special assessment in the first place?
Yes.
So there was an understanding there was a shortfall that had to be covered, right? How it was
Right.
broken down, I mean, you'd have to look at the minutes and find out
But
which
they
meeting it
covered it,
was.
they made an announcement in the middle of the year. They had used the special assessment to cover that deficit. That deficit was taken care of. Isn't that correct, Mr. Jansen?
The 100,000 was because, remember last December, we increased the maintenance quite a bit. And that's when everyone got very upset that our monthly maintenance was going to be increased by,
25%.
yeah, something very high. So I wasn't at the meeting, but then I remember hearing at the meeting saying, why don't we take that 100,000 out? Because that's what they had suggested, we increase our maintenance to reflect, and then do a special assessment. So then we only increased the maintenance 5%, 10%,
13%.
okay? And then we took the remaining balance of that original budget that was planned into the 100,000. So that 100,000 was a special assessment in February of this year, before you guys came, before anyone came on. I don't know where you're getting 80,000 to pay back the special assessment. I don't have the exact number, I think it was more around 48,000 was borrowed from the Built Right special assessment to help us cover our deficit from the previous operating year. And then the remaining of that, the $50,000 remaining, was going to be used as a cushion, which the CPA told us we should have at least 2 months cushion in our operating funds. So that 100,000 was supposed to be to pay back the special assessment plus the cushion, which if we had just left it as the 25% increase, we gave people the choice. You pay it monthly for the next 12 months, or you pay it one lump sum and keep our monthly maintenance down.
What, the $100,000?
Correct.
Especially, no, the $100,000 as a percent was they sure to pay in one payment because it was $100 and something dollars
No,
for
no,
the
no,
special
Monica, no, no, I'm not
That's what he's
disagreeing,
saying.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
That's what he's saying.
That's what I'm saying. So,
Uh-huh. Okay.
And everyone, I remember Chris was here, everyone felt like, no, just pay a lump sum instead of paying a higher amount every month for 12 months. So by the end of this 2017, you're supposed to have that 2-month reserve, or that what the CPA said, to have there by the end of the year, not now you guys have it in an operating whatever account right now. But the amount to pay back the special assessment was supposed to be done by the end of February or March, and I know before Ida left, she had a check to do that transfer from the operating to the special assessment, but you wouldn't sign it, and
I signed.
and you
I did sign
you
because.
signed, but both you didn't get 2 board members to sign.
Yes,
So it
we
was
did.
it was never transferred.
Because when, no,
Monica,
but,
Monica,
I know, but Ida
Monica,
told me that it
let-
has to be signed.
Monica.
Let him speak, please.
And then if it was signed, it was too late for ACAM to do that transfer themselves. Because the timeline between when they were leaving to, you can't just, sign it the last day and then expect them to have it deposited and done. It never happened
For 48,000?
for the lower amount. And I don't know the exact number, but it was an amount, because I asked Ida, what
On
did
the
the
email
board,
you mentioned
did
about
they
48,000.
transfer it or not?
Sure.
And she said, no, it was never done.
So what we should have somewhere in our monthly statements then is an excess check, right, above and beyond the 16,000 a month to reflect that.
But the check might not exist anymore, you know what I mean? They
Well,
might
not
have been torn
physically,
down.
understood, but on our statements, on our financials, if indeed we did pay Monica, we would have it showing somewhere.
But you don't, because I've been looking at the finances, I've been getting the finances every month.
Right.
And the money has not been transferred back to
Which
that.
is why we're having this conversation.
So,
Okay, fair
and
enough.
that's why I keep asking her, like, when are you guys going to do it? Because I don't want us to be in trouble next year, or 2 years when we have another balloon payment due, and there's a shortfall of whatever the amount was. But that other remaining balance of
that's
100,000.
that's where the question is, because according to Amari, if the schedule from the bank shows that we're paid in full based on our monthly statements, then why would we be overpaying to the bank? I mean, I don't disagree with paying down the principal, and saving on interest. But if indeed we owed it, then there should be a
You
deficit.
would need to talk to the CPA for that, because they're the ones that say you need to pay this back. Because when we left, we knew that as long as the other residents who still owe money pay, including unit 206, which is not paying,
Right.
that the building would still be fine, meaning its obligation paying the built right loan, the special assessment loan.
So the recommendations came from the CPA,
I think so.
from Shane Muller?
No, is that who, did you guys switch CPAs?
Mhm.
Then it should be the same CPA.
Okay, so just to wrap this up then, the question of how much needs to go towards special assessment will come to us once we talk to the CPA.
And look at the minutes, and see what the minutes were from
If
the
it was
previous board,
indeed-
it was from the
Right.
previous board meetings.
Sure.
Before you guys came on, there was, it should be in the minutes.
So let's say it was 48,000, the other 52 should remain in the operating.
As a cushion.
As a
And that's-
cushion.
That's my understanding of it. Because
Yeah.
for the emergencies, for anything, just like they said,
And for a
like
cushion.
hurricane, you know, we don't budget for a hurricane.
Right.
But we
Mhm.
had it, and you guys had to buy, different
Mhm.
supplies. And that's what they said, you need to have a cushion for unforeseen things, whether
Of
a
course.
water pipe
But
breaks.
it's been forever,
The elevator
so they
ropes.
always are
Because
advised to
they've
have a
always
cushion.
advised us and we never did it.
Mhm.
And finally, we said this previous year, you know what, we need to have it, we need to do it, and that's why we increased the, maintenance last year to
Mhm.
25% or whatever it was.
Yeah, but 2015, I remember
We
to have
talked
the
about it.
cushion. I
Yeah.
totally remember when we.
Every year he
discussed.
comes and says, you guys need to have a cushion of 2 months, and we always opted not to, we always opted to keep maintenance low.
Yep.
So how do we get a reconciliation for special assessments in terms of this built right construction project? Because if along the way people prepay a unit sells and they, wanna pay it off in full, or if there's delinquencies, how do we know that we're not fronting the money for people who aren't paying or underpaying when we should have paid something in full? Like, why does that 16,000 remain the same all the time if people have paid more or less? And maybe
You mean
right
paid
now.
back to the bank?
Correct.
Well, because I'm assuming right now you're currently making your payments based off of what the invoices that you receive and based off of the loan terms. So if you wanted to pay anything additional to the payment to pay off the principal sooner, then that would be a decision of the board of directors. But as of right now, we're just continuing on the same track.
Right, but
And the way I understand it is that once they figured out who started on a payment plan and whatever the interest, calculated over, amortized over all the years.
Right.
If someone sells a unit and decides they wanna pay it off in full before, the accountant or whoever was doing our finances brought down the amount, not to the actual true amount of
Mhm.
what the, payment in full was, but that we've kept the coupons the same for all the other units, and in reality, those would come down a little bit, and the benefit there was then the association would have the excess cash at the end. Not a significant amount, but in that, it would be it would come back to the association, whatever
Correct.
it was.
Well, the way that our accounting works is that if a unit does in fact pay in full, what happens is that the unit is actually billed in full. So the ledger is still gonna reflect 0.
Right.
But essentially, instead of it charging every single month,
Right.
it'll charge the whole thing all up front and then show the payment right underneath it.
Yes, it's
So,
true, yeah.
and then on your schedule,
Right.
on your balance sheet, it'll show that the funds are sitting there. So I guess what you should do is either, depending on how many units sell or how much money you collect, either on a quarterly basis or every 6 months, just do an evaluation of how many paid in full and then pay an additional.
Well, I'm pretty sure
Payment.
in the past, I'm 99% sure that whenever a unit did sell and they prepaid, that money went straight to the bank. It should not be an operating.
Okay.
Correct,
Well,
it went,
that's
I'm
not.
almost positive it went straight to the bank, because your HUD statement shows the payment, from the closing attorney too, but I don't know that 100% for sure.
So-
But that's what
so-
should happen.
That's what should happen. So, I mean,
I
I don't know.
don't think that that's happening with our estoppels. We can double check, but I'm almost positive our
so
estoppels do not
I
reflect
wanna
us
make
send it
sure this is
directly
not
to.
artificially inflated, right, with monies that should have been paid down to the special assessment.
Well,
that
on
are
the
sitting in
balance
here.
sheet, it says prepaid special assessment, so it'll tell you how much is within that
Right.
amount. It'll show you how much is actually reflected as though, as the payments of the people who paid in full. So we are keeping account of that.
And in your ledger, you would see, if you wanted to pull up, how many units still have balances and what that balance is.
You could do a report like that, yes.
So if we have 80 units that still owe, let's say 20% already prepaid, and we have, 4 or 5 more years left, you would see what that balance is.
The blended
So
delinquency.
that to me is how we would reconcile, right?
Yes,
And
essentially,
we
that's
would-
what I was saying. If you wanted to do it on a quarterly basis, we could do it on a quarterly basis, and however many people, if 5 people paid in full that quarter, we take that lump sum and we make an additional payment to the bank. Cause I mean, I would have to check our estoppels, but I can almost say that they do not reflect to make that payment from the title company to the bank directly.
Okay,
That's unusual
so
to me.
for the record,
Yeah.
and maybe we need a vote, but I would like to make sure, going back to when you guys took over at least, or if you can for the beginning of the year, make certain that we're not sitting on anybody's money that should be for special assessment, number
Okay.
one. And going forward, that any closings that do occur, that money does not hit our operating account, that it goes to the bank as it should, right?
And then what they suggested, what the ACAM finance people suggested to us, once they reconciled, what you're saying to reconcile the account, rates are lower now. So they said, once you know what your outstanding balance is for the bill rate special assessment, you can refinance it, get it at a lower rate, but continue with everyone else's, continue the regular payments. So you have that cushion in case there's defaults, in case there's things like that.
Kevin-
And that I'll actually
Kevin
get
has the
Kevin on the
answer.
phone
You
for,
remember
because
the interest rate?
according to Kevin's recommendation, it was not wise to refinance at this point because of the prepayment penalty that's included in your loan doc. But I'll get him on the phone because, like I said, that he's the expert in that, and he'll better explain that situation, cause that's not my area of expertise. And I'll have to look in to see if we're able to have the payment go directly to the bank, because it may be a cleaner accounting if the money comes to us to reflect on the ledger immediately, and then we turn around and
That's
cut the
fine.
check.
That's fine.
Just for
For paper
transparency
trail, no,
purposes
I'm
and
okay with
paper
that
trail,
too. That's fine.
it may be cleaner that way.
That's fine.
But that's definitely something that we can do to keep track of those closings
Okay.
and send the payment, but that'll come through the board for approval, and then the additional
fine.
payment will go directly to the bank.
So as far as our financials go, is there a way of including a page where we would illustrate which units and their balances then?
Well, that's included in your delinquency.
That's
and-
only if they don't pay.
Correct. So
I
you
just wanna
mean
know what
on
the
the special
an
assessment?
ongoing tab, so we're all on the same page and we don't have to revisit this 3, 6, 9 months later and people question, I paid, I didn't pay, I owe, I don't owe. So if we have a running tab every month and they're paying it down, as we should, right? That $16,000 a month payment should be broken down into all those remaining units that owe, that balance would be decreased.
Okay, that's something more on the management side, so I can work with Jordana on setting something up, cause that's not something that our accounting department necessarily does, but we definitely have the reports that we can pull
I
within the
mean, you're
system
coding
to-
it now, right?
Right,
You're able to
exactly.
pull
Yeah,
the
but it's in
report.
one,
But
it's in
but
one
our
report.
financials are a template, so it's not always feasible to add additional types of reporting, but I can definitely work with Jordana to have that report included with the financials when, but that's more
And
on the
even if it's
management
a
side.
simple Excel
Are
sheet,
you referring to the delinquency report that I would pull with that charge code as
Well-
SPA 1 or SPA 2?
Technically, yes, but he wants the delinquency report in reverse, like he wants to know who
Prepaid.
still, no, like who
What their
owes
balances
moving
are,
forward in the
period.
future, not
You-
who owes today.
you would know if
but
they're
who
30,
owes
60, 90 days late
everybody else.
anyways. That's a delinquency.
Yeah,
But
so
just
it's
to
kind
know.
of, it's kind of reverse, like
Okay.
who's still gonna be billed, essentially.
For example, last I pulled the cash management report for that account, the special assessment account, we have like $48,000 in it. So if you wanted to make a larger payment towards a loan, we could do so, right? And just do a check request and have them sign off on it?
It depends, because I would see exactly how much of that money is prepaid, and I would pay those amounts.
Exactly.
I wouldn't necessarily, I would leave that cushion in there in case a unit fell delinquent.
Okay.
You wanna be able to
Okay.
still be able to make your payment and not overpay the bank and then not be able to make your payment. So
Okay,
it's a thin line
okay.
there.
Melissa, I
Yes.
heard 2 words that I have not heard before in connection with the bill right loan. One, Mr. Jansen talked about a balloon payment. Anybody familiar with that concept in
No.
our loan documents?
No, and
Balloon
actually, if
payment?
you would like, I can call Kevin and get him on the phone because, like I said,
Right.
loans are not my expertise. Kevin is, and he's fully reviewed all of your loan documents, so he can answer those types of questions. That's
I know
not something
exactly
I
what
can.
it is.
No, we know what it is too, we just don't know
what
that
it
it's
is.
in our
We know
loan
what a
docs.
balloon payment is.
It's in our contract,
We have a balloon payment?
yes.
Why?
Well, because apparently the contract that we have with the bank, have you read the contract with the loan?
No.
We should pay, we pay only the interest and then we do a balloon payment. That was the contract.
That's ridiculous.
If you
Oh,
don't mind
it's
putting Kevin on the phone.
absolutely
Yeah, put him on
ridiculous.
the phone.
But that might not be the right terminology.
No.
It might be you're paying interest and then it converts to term. If you convert to term, that's different than balloon. That just means that you're only paying interest until it converts and then you're a set amount every
Sure.
month thereafter.
I believe that the
It's
interest was only the
different.
first year, I don't think that was the whole.
Right, that's what I'm
Term,
saying.
yeah.
That's it's a different formatting. But Kevin is available,
What was the
so
other question?
He read
What was the other term that you were-
we have for the.
Yes.
Oh, okay, he should.
yes, I sent him all of your loan documents,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he's up to speed as far as your loan documents. So he can answer all of these questions that I
Melissa,
can. So
the other term was prepayment penalty.
yes,
Is there a prepayment penalty?
We're gonna find out.
We're gonna
Kevin's
call,
gonna answer
yeah.
that question. I saw an email that said you do if you refinance it, not if you prepay just by
Right.
paying it. But if someone else refinances it, there's a penalty to it.
And
But
usually
Kevin will
there's a-
answer.
But I'm sorry, but there is a
Hello?
penalty for unit owners when they pay for the
Hold on
bond
a
that they
second.
owe.
No,
Yes, it is.
really?
Yes,
Hold,
it is.
okay, Kevin, I'm gonna put
If
you on
wanna
speaker,
pay it
okay?
forward, you pay the interest, they told
Hold
you.
on a
Even
second.
if you're
No,
paying for-
there is.
Yes, it is.
Hello?
I do pay, and I didn't
Yes,
pay.
I'm
No,
here.
no, no, no.
Okay.
You need to pay at the
There's three
beginning.
options.
No,
Options, yeah, at the
I
beginning.
paid monthly for a few months.
Hold on, Kevin.
And then I paid
You will
every.
see.
Kevin,
Hi, how are you?
fine, this is Mr. Cruz, and you're surrounded by other members of the board, or the phone is surrounded by other members of the board, and Melissa and Janine, and Hector, who was the de facto treasurer in the previous board. Anyway, I had a couple of questions concerning the loan documents. Number one, is there some kind of balloon payment?
That's all.
Okay, well, point taken, and next time we talk to the CPA and we're doing our audit, then we should raise that question as well, because they would know going back year over year, clearly where $20,000 in one shot would have gone. I mean, if somebody bled it out at, $1,000 a month in petty cash, then maybe that's harder to find. But if you're suggesting that there was an account with 50,000 that now has 30,000, then yeah, that CPA, that person doing the audit should find that. But for this meeting and going forward, we have a cash account here that we're trying to figure out. And you
She
got it?
figured- Yes. Yes, what happened is that there's two money market accounts. But normally what happens with money market accounts is that the number of transactions that are permitted to come out of that account are limited, that's why your interest is so high. So when Jordana cut the check, she cut it out of the account that it was supposed to be cut out of, and the bank contacted her and told her that's a non-transactional account. And so the money essentially came out of the other money market account instead of the one that you wanted it to come out of, simply because of transactions.
Okay.
So what I advised her is that moving forward, the best recommendation is to move the money from the money market account to the operating account and cut the check out of operating.
Right.
And, but I told her to contact Kevin to confirm exactly what the limitations are on those accounts, cause each money market has its specific, specific transactions allowed per month and stuff like that, or if they're even allowed. So she's gonna look into that as
So
well.
those cash balances there
The
reflect
money's,
already the
Yes.
deductions?
You will
It
see
does,
the
it's just-
deduction
it's just
came out of
coming out of
MM02.
it came out of the other account.
MM02 instead of MM01.
And how much do we have pending, like in accounts payable? Do we have
As
an
far as-
accounting of, cause that's showing obviously cash on hand according to our books,
Mhm.
bank statements, but according to our books, do we have accounts payable? Are we sitting on checks right now for 10, 20, 30,000 that we need to pay?
I'd have to pull the report, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
I don't want us to
With insurance
falsely
included,
believe
et
that
cetera.
that's our cash, right, if we have checks that still,
This is
Are
including
waiting.
the.
Well, no,
accrued
that
expenses, no.
reflects those accounts payable,
even if they haven't been paid.
correct?
Okay,
Once you as the board have approved them, they're reflected in that balance. So
well,
whether they've
Even
cleared
if
or
they're not
not,
cashed.
yes, even if they have not cleared the bank,
so what was the one that I signed yesterday? That was the,
For 5,000 for the AC?
for the AC.
That one was yesterday. When did you pull this one?
I
Which
pulled it
account?
yesterday.
But that one has been cashed. Sorry, cut. That gets cut tomorrow.
Remember, they get
We'll cut
batched,
checks
if you
3 times
approve
a-
them yesterday, they get batched this morning. So I might have pulled that report before
That's
it
fine,
hit the
okay.
batch.
No, yeah, they get cut tomorrow.
So it's not,
Mondays,
it's not
Wednesdays,
when you
Fridays
make the,
for
re-
us.
it's not the
Right,
check
checks not being
request
cut till tomorrow.
that debits it. It's not the check request. It's only when two board members actually sign and
Approve
Then it's,
approve it.
then it's reflected as
And
accounts
then the
payable.
following day.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now, we have been paying our bills on time, right?
But we've been receiving several invoices from many months back that were not paid by the previous management company.
Still?
We were receiving them until not too long ago.
But we did pay them.
The ones that had to be paid, yes, we
And,
did pay them.
and the recent ones, the ones since you came on board,
Mm.
have also been paid on time,
Mhm.
right? So where's this deficit then? How can there be a deficit? Where are we getting the money to pay the deficit, and where's the money going to?
Because remember, it's like a bank account. As the money comes in, you're using the money. So, in other words, if you were to end the association today, you would have a deficit.
Yeah.
But as the money comes in, you start, they're not all the bills are due at the same time, and not everybody's paying at the same time.
Or
See?
robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Correct, that's exactly it. So in some line items, you haven't gone over, you may be under, and then you have other line items that you've gone over.
Do you have that in the financial statement?
It's in the financials,
It shows where we have gone over.
yes,
Yeah, the
and every
income
single line
variance.
item that you've gone over,
The
absolutely.
variance year to
And
date and the
is it-
variance per month
So
is
you're telling me that if you
included.
add up those variances, you'll come out to $38,000?
As of June.
Yeah, and apparently you've been running with a deficit, and when we took over, the deficit was about 28,000.
So we
So
have
according
increased
to
the
March,
deficit?
according to March's financial, which was done with ACAM, you were at a deficit anyway. So
But we
you
have
had-
increased it by 10,000.
You've increased it, yeah, correct. You've gone over, you've had unexpected, costs like the
Mhm.
elevator, like Jordana just said. So you've had a deficit already.
All right, now, this is all concerning the operating account, but we have this other special account. We have the reserve account.
By the way,
We
that
have-
deficit is just reflective of the budget. Clearly, we're in the black based on
Mhm.
those numbers that we have now. So you understand the difference. This is just a snapshot, right, based on a ill-conceived budget to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's gonna clearly show a deficit because that's the way it was designed, poorly.
Right.
There's no way, unless you change the budget, that that's gonna look better. So it doesn't matter that we inherited it or we're continuing a budget, it's just under budgeted.
Yeah, and it looks like, and again, it looks like it was something that's, you've been doing for a few years incorrectly.
Right. Well, we're thinking of deficit in terms of the literal terms, the literal
I
meaning
understand.
of the word.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm concerned about, is whether we have money, and if we don't, where are we gonna get it? And if we do, how are we gonna use it? So I go back then to the question of the accounts, and we have a reserve account for $8,400, that had $8,400 for painting.
I don't have the reserve schedule here, but, we
Well-
have 32,000 in the reserve account.
We had a reserve account specifically for painting, $8,500. So I suppose that you use that to pay for the painting of the lobby. Right?
We did not take
Well,
anything
no,
out of reserves.
Take it out of reserve.
Correct,
At least the
that's-
schedule that I have, the reserve painting specifically states exterior.
Yeah, that's what I have mentioned.
Specifically, it states
Yes.
exterior.
It
does.
specifically states exterior, which means you would not be able to use it for the hall, for the.
And keep in mind, your reserves are things that you don't use for your day-to-day. So usually your reserves is over $10,000, anything over $10,000, and usually things that take a few years to accumulate. So you wouldn't
Right.
do any, painting your hallways is kind of
Right.
day-to-day, unless you specifically paint all the hallways all at the same time, and you specifically mentioned painting interior in your reserves. It's not
Okay.
necessarily very common.
So,
Okay.
and historically, I think we've only had 4, maybe 5 reserve
Yes.
items.
Yeah.
Paving, roof,
Right.
4, and
Paving,
contingency.
roof, painting, those are
Painting.
the 3 that are required by law.
Right.
And, you have contingency,
Yeah, which.
Oh, there's no elevator. Okay.
not
No.
according to your.
Not
balance
according to
sheet.
your.
Okay.
No.
All right, so then we had a settlement from Bergeron.
But those are things you may wanna consider when when you're doing the budget for 2018 and your pool and things like that.
Right.
We've been waiving reserves for many years.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the reason why, because there's a lot of turnover, so people don't wanna fund an account that they're not gonna be able to pull from later.
Correct. That's the new mentality.
That's why special assessments.
That's why they're more common today than they were before.
It's a young demographic in this building.
Yeah.
So the Bergeron settlement, $10,100.
Mhm.
Where is that money?
In the operating account. And that's a wash, it's an in and out, since we're paying the landscaping.
Yes, but, I mean, we have that money so we can do the landscape.
Yes.
Cameras, we paid for with the reserve account? No?
No, that was operating because we
Operating.
budgeted $2,000 for
Remember,
cameras.
we're not using the reserve, other than the items that are mentioned here to use. We can't. You're not supposed to.
Right.
Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
You're not supposed to.
Now, the built right bond, we're holding back $13,000. Where is that money?
You're going to pull it from the special assessment account because of special assessment related issue.
Right.
So that's the check that you're going to be
And,
cutting.
and the additional
From operating to
6,300?
special accounts?
So he's gonna be pulling that in from the Banco Popular special assessment account.
But we need another 6,300. It's 19,300.
That's fine, we have that. We have 48.
In the operating account?
No, the special assessment account.
So all of it is coming from the special assessment
We should,
for
yes.
Bergeron?
It should, yeah.
Because it's related to
It's
the
related to
special
special
assessment.
assessment, no.
For built right, yeah. So that money never
So
went
should
to
it be
court
operating?
register? That, we never put that in escrow?
No, we didn't have the money yet.
No, we didn't have the money.
So I'm gonna go to the bank tomorrow and get the check.
Mhm.
$15,000, 693 for collections that went to the operating account,
Mhm.
and the $7,000 from the laundry room. All of that in the operating account, right?
Yes, laundry rooms are operating as well, yes.
Okay. So in real terms, how much are we in the black?
We'll know once we get a full financial, but as of June, like I mentioned, it was 38,000.
No, that's in the red, and
Oh,
what
in
he's
the black.
asking,
I see,
what he's
I see,
asking
yeah.
is based on our bank account, our statements. So, and I understand why,
Being a whole-
so the way we feel, right, on a cash basis, is that we do have some savings reflected in our accounts that have tens of thousands of dollars in them. Whether or not we earmark that money yet against, or coded it against its proper line item in the budget or unforeseen expenses, that yet to be seen. And I think that that's where we have to plan better, and I don't know when budget season is and when we
Yeah.
start
It's
working on that.
ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I would rather work off of actual numbers, you know, bank statements, if you will, than the old budget. And look at, you know, when we create the budget, what did we actually draw down and pay, physically pay, check by check? And look at it in terms of, was it, you know, legal, was it this, was it that, just like you would
Yeah, we
prepare
can
any
sit down
budget.
and do it. I'll pull the reports per the,
But it's
per
in-
each
Well,
line item.
actually, one thing that I was gonna work on with Jordana before the meeting started is, I actually have a format that it's a projection flow, a projection cash flow that will work through the rest of the year. And Jordana and I had just started it right before the meeting started, and we can work on that this afternoon. But that's definitely a spreadsheet that will give you all the answers that you're looking for, because what it will do is, it will not necessarily base it off of the budget itself, it'll base it off of your actuals. So if your pool is no longer $50 a month and now it's $100 a month,
Right.
their spreadsheet will say 100 instead of what the budget states.
Mhm.
And at least that way, once we have all the data included in there, you'll be able to project through the end of the year exactly how accurate you will be. You know, so yes, you may have overspent in the beginning of the year, but if you continue on the track that you portray, this is where you'll end up. So
Right.
that's definitely something Jordana and I can work on, and then every month as the financials are produced,
Right.
she can update it to reflect actuals, you know, and we can work on that today, and she can get it out to you guys.
I can't wait for that.
see- Huh?
I can't wait for that.
Well then,
I'm
let's go,
already-
and I'll go
I'm
over there
already-
right now.
He's excited, watch out. Yes.
Yeah, because, and it'll actually break it down in the order of your budget,
Right.
but not based off of the budget. It'll just be based off of the line items,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then the totals will be based off of the information that Jordana and I put in the system. So all of your savings will be reflected in the months in which the savings are actually coming in, and then you'll be
Yeah.
able to see the first couple of, well, keep in mind, it's based off of financials, so those first couple of months, it'll be based off of the prior management's financials and the data that they're giving us. So we'll put it in like that, but then moving forward, Jordana will put in the numbers based off of what your contracts are now, how much you're spending now, and things like that, so.
Yeah, that's what we need.
It'll, yes, exactly,
Yeah.
and she'll be able to update it regularly, so we're gonna work on that this afternoon, so that,
Right.
you know.
Okay, so the other thing is, on top of everything else that we wanted to do and that needs to be done, now we have to deal with the hurricane aftermath. And one of the things, two main things, disposing of the debris and fixing the fences. As you may have seen, some of the fences were damaged. And we had been looking into changing part of the fences anyway, so I think this is an opportunity to achieve the two goals at the same time by placing more secure fences that have an overhang that makes more difficult for people to come to the property. And you had an estimate for that, right? What was the total more or less for that?
For the fences, I believe 7,000 or 8,000.
So it's not that much money.
I don't know that that was around the whole perimeter, was it?
It was
He
most
wanted
of
it in
it.
certain areas,
It was most of it.
not everywhere.
Okay.
It was most of it. It wasn't in this area here because we felt that it was not
Mhm.
necessary here,
Right.
but it was in the other areas that are vulnerable.
And didn't you look into the insurances?
The insurance.
And the
is not
insurance to
gonna-
see what the deductible was?
So
Yeah,
yeah,
we
it's
did.
480,000.
We're nowhere
Yeah,
near.
so you
that.
couldn't make a claim.
So, can we use the reserve account for that?
No.
No.
All right.
But there is a contingency account
Yeah,
within
but
the
it
reserve.
only has like
Yeah, but you have no
$1,000.
money in it.
Okay, never mind.
Uh-huh.
So
We
I
can't
mean,
use that.
technically you could use that, but there's not much there.
Yeah, I wouldn't even pay for
You
it.
have, you have $1,500 in there.
Yeah, 1,500.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so do you think we can start on that project or do we need to?
I think we should do our cash flow position
Yes.
report first,
Yeah.
and then
Correct.
you guys go
So-
from there.
So two things I wanna say, building on that, number one, and by the way, personally, I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
And Jordana, you know, has always made herself available, unfortunately, 24/7 it seems, because.
I tell her not to.
Yeah, you know, and we need to stop texting and emailing you on nights and weekends, but, I know I appreciate it, I think the board appreciates it, and I think the building recognizes the difference,
Thank
you
you.
know? So if you ever need a letter of recommendation, whatever, but she's not going anywhere, okay?
Yeah. As long as you're good to her, she won't go anywhere.
We're pushing her, we're making her
Don't
better.
kill her, don't kill her.
No, we're
Right,
making her
right.
better, she's getting tremendous training over here.
So we have often been like the three monkeys, like see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And I wanna make sure that even if we're gonna look at things differently, which is fine, that realistically we're prepared. And by saying that, there's the fences, there is gonna be landscaping, there are gonna be, you know, other security concerns and other improvements we wanna make that were never factored in, were maybe a one-shot deal. And I think that, you know, as we're getting all the proposals, all these bids together, that needs to be incorporated in our mentality of preparing this budget, because some of these items could be spread out, you know, with some of the cost savings and amortized, and maybe we don't do it all at once. For example, the landscaping, you know, I think everybody's gonna rush out there now and try to get landscaping. So there's gonna be a spike in demand, which
Mhm.
prices are gonna reflect, and the labor and everything else. So maybe we don't run out and spend the full 10,000 that we were given by Bergeron for the front. And maybe we do that, you know, in 2 or 3 installments and build on that. So that is more of a management thing, I think,
Yeah.
and how you handle it. And again, how you know, work the cash flow. But she believes that we're gonna bleed and it's possible. He believes we're in the black and we're gonna reduce our maintenance and give people money back, okay? I'm sure Manny and somewhere between me as well believe that we, you know, would be happy if we didn't have to raise the maintenance or do a special assessment, but that we, you know, are on track for staying or getting better, you know? So, all this to say is that we appreciate what you're doing, and we do put a lot of pressure on everyone, I think, because we've been so far behind the 8 ball in the past. We're just trying to feel like we're catching up, and there's so much more that we want to accomplish. And this is not just a 1 year, 1 board thing. I've been here over 20 years, Monica, we've all been here over 20 years, you know? So we look at this as a long-term investment, and whether it's choosing the right vendors, you know, and partnering up that wanna work with us as well, and maybe they'll offer us a payment plan, or maybe there's, you know, creative ways of doing the things we wanna do. We really are leaning on you guys for your expertise. This isn't the board dictating to you and telling you what to do. We need guidance, we expect support and a direction that we can learn from and grow, because we don't have all the answers. And I think together we can do that, you know? I'm off my soapbox.
No, and I agree, and sometimes when you pick up where someone left off, it takes some time, you know? You know, you can't say, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna fix everything in 6 months. Well, if they've, for many years, have been doing things a certain way, and you haven't had the money, and you've been misbudgeting where things should go, you know, you can't expect yourselves to fix everything in 1 year, cause I think that might have been the mentality.
We did a
And
whole
you guys
year's
have
worth
done-
already.
And you've done so much.
Let me say
Yeah.
something. Let me say something, okay, please. I've been in the board enough. The only year that I wasn't on the board was 2016. But just to let you know that we carrying at this point deficits from years and years. It's not only the previous board. It's like we've been carrying this for years, over years and years. So we try to fix it right now, but the people has to understand. It's not only the previous board, it's been. Okay.
No, it's a process, I agree.
So it's a process that we're working on it, but we have to be very conscious that I understand that we save money, but we need to be very aware where are we gonna use the money and if we're gonna use it right. That's the only thing. I mean, we have priorities, and those, we have to put the money in priorities. So we have to think about it. Let's not create new projects until everything is done the right way.
And to your point, I'm often a believer that, we repair and preserve what we currently have.
Quítame esa cámara.
What?
No, porque quita la cámara que no me gusta.
Oh.
Van a empezar a cobrar. I'm gonna start charging.
Anyways.
Brady, we want you on camera.
And
Does
on a lighter note, are we planning
Yeah,
another
lighten this
happy
whole
hour?
area.
Another?
We haven't even planned a happy hour. We did
Well-
that painting with a twist thing.
I think the painting with the
That was
That was
awesome.
great.
That was a
a
great
success.
time.
I have so much fun. We won.
That's
We
right.
need
We
to
have to
go.
go. We have to take the class together. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can.
So, okay, any other questions, Hector? No? Okay, officially, I guess the meeting is adjourned. I
Yes,
make a
please.
motion?
Thank
Okay.
Now you can talk about happy